There is a conversation happening in your mind every single day. It begins the moment you wake up and continues quietly in the background as you go through your life. Most of the time, you don't even notice it. This inner dialogue shapes how you see yourself, how you respond to challenges, and how you interpret your experiences. It influences your confidence, your focus, and your decisions, often without your awareness. Many people believe their biggest struggles come from the outside, circumstances, people, or lack of opportunity, but very often, the real struggle begins within. Negative self-talk is subtle. It doesn't always sound extreme or obvious. Sometimes it appears as simple, familiar thoughts like, "I'm not ready yet," "I'll start later," or "this is just how I am." Over time, these small thoughts turn into patterns, and patterns quietly shape behavior. The Stoic philosophers understood this deeply. They believed the quality of a person's life is closely connected to the quality of their thoughts. Marcus Aurelius wrote daily reflections to discipline his own mind, reminding himself to focus on what is within his control and release what is not. Negative self-talk often feels personal, but it is usually habitual. It is formed through past experiences and repeated reactions. The problem is not that these thoughts appear, the problem is that they go unquestioned. When thoughts are not examined, they become beliefs. And when beliefs are repeated, they influence actions. In this video, we are going to explore how negative self-talk quietly affects your mindset, your confidence, and your growth. You'll learn why this inner voice feels so convincing and how to regain control of it in a calm, practical way. If this topic resonates with you, take a moment to subscribe to the channel and share this video with someone who might need it. It helps the channel grow and allows more people to benefit from this message. This video is not about forcing positivity or ignoring reality. It is about awareness, clarity, and mental discipline. When you learn to observe your thoughts instead of obeying them, you create space for calm, focused action. And that is where real change begins. One of the most important things to understand about negative self-talk is this: a thought is not the same as a fact. Many people assume that because a thought appears in their mind, it must be true. But the human mind produces thousands of thoughts every day, many of them automatic, unexamined, and based on past experiences rather than present reality. Negative self-talk often sounds convincing because it uses familiar language. It speaks in your own voice. It feels personal. But familiarity does not equal accuracy. When your mind says, "I'm not good enough," or "I always fail," it is not offering evidence. It is offering an interpretation shaped by memory, emotion, and habit. Stoic philosophy teaches that events themselves are neutral. What affects us is the judgment we attach to those events. A mistake is simply an event. Turning that mistake into a conclusion about your worth is a choice, often an unconscious one. Negative self-talk tends to exaggerate and generalize. One setback becomes "I can't do this." One uncomfortable moment becomes "I'm not built for this." These conclusions feel real, but they are mental shortcuts, not objective truths. Learning to pause and question your thoughts is a form of mental discipline. Instead of asking, "Why am I like this?" ask, "Is this thought accurate?" Often, the answer is no, or at least, not completely. This doesn't mean replacing every negative thought with unrealistic positivity. It means choosing clarity over assumption. When you create space between yourself and your thoughts, you regain control. You stop reacting automatically and start responding consciously. The Stoics practiced observing the mind without becoming absorbed by it. They understood that inner freedom begins when thoughts are examined rather than obeyed. Negative self-talk loses its influence the moment it is seen clearly, and that clarity is the foundation for real, lasting improvement. Take a moment to think about how you speak to yourself. After a mistake, after a setback, or even during a simple struggle, what does your inner dialogue sound like? For most people, it's harsh, impatient, and unforgiving. Thoughts like, "You're so weak, you always mess things up," or "You'll never get it right," are common. Now imagine saying the same things to a friend or someone you care about. Would you speak to them like that? Most likely not. You would offer patience, encouragement, and perspective. You would remind them that one failure does not define their future. You would speak with kindness, not cruelty. Yet, internally, many people remove that compassion when addressing themselves. This double standard quietly erodes self-respect. Self-respect is not earned from external approval. It comes from how fairly and rationally you treat yourself. The Stoics believed that discipline and self-mastery start with fairness toward one's own mind. Being overly critical or cruel to yourself is the opposite of discipline. It is self-sabotage. Negative self-talk creates an environment where personal growth becomes difficult. It adds unnecessary stress, discourages experimentation, and undermines confidence. People often think being harsh motivates them, but in reality, it usually creates hesitation and self-doubt. Growth is not about punishment. It is about clarity and constructive correction. You can acknowledge mistakes and weaknesses without attacking your identity. You can hold yourself accountable while maintaining respect and patience. When you learn to speak to yourself with fairness, you create mental space for learning, focus, and calm action. The inner voice becomes a guide, not a tyrant. Your inner dialogue sets the foundation for how you approach challenges, relationships, and opportunities. Treat it with the same care and respect you would offer someone you truly value. This simple shift in perspective, observing your thoughts and asking, "Would I ever say this to a friend?" is one of the most powerful ways to start transforming your mind and your life. Your thoughts are powerful not just in the mind, but in how you act in the world. Every time you tell yourself, "I can't do this," or "I always fail," your mind begins to prepare your body and behavior to match those words. Repeated thoughts create patterns, and patterns shape habits. Negative self-talk doesn't stay only in your head. It influences your decisions, your effort, and even the way you interact with others. If you constantly tell yourself you're incapable, you may avoid challenges, hesitate to take action, or give up too soon, not because you lack ability, but because your mind expects failure. Stoic philosophy teaches that character is built through daily practice and repeated choices. This includes mental habits. Every repeated thought strengthens a neural pathway, making it easier for your mind to follow the same pattern in the future. That is why negative self-talk often feels automatic. It is not truth. It is a habit. The good news is that habits can be reshaped. When you replace negative statements with neutral, realistic ones, your behavior begins to change. Instead of saying, "I always fail," you might say, "This attempt didn't work, but I can adjust and try again." Instead of, "I'm terrible at this," you could say, "I am learning and improving with each step." This simple adjustment removes emotional weight and reduces the internal pressure that holds you back. It allows you to act with clarity rather than hesitation. Your mind performs best when it feels guided, not attacked. Negative self-talk can quietly limit your potential over time, but awareness and conscious replacement of thoughts create freedom. The moment you stop believing every thought automatically, you open the door to action, growth, and consistent progress. Remember, your mind is like a garden. If you plant seeds of doubt repeatedly, they will grow into weeds. If you plant seeds of observation, understanding, and rational thought, you create space for positive growth. Small shifts in inner dialogue may not seem dramatic at first, but over time, they fundamentally shape who you become and how you live your life. Negative self-talk doesn't just affect confidence. It often creates anxiety, sometimes without you even realizing it. Many anxious thoughts are future-based. They imagine worst-case scenarios, replay potential failures, or anticipate judgment from others. For example, what if I fail? What if they notice my mistake? What if everything goes wrong? These thoughts feel urgent and real, even though most of them never materialize. This is because the mind reacts to the imagined future in the same way it reacts to real events. Your body produces stress responses, your heart rate increases, and your focus shifts from action to worry. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus said, "Man is not worried by real problems so much as by his imagined anxieties." Most of what you fear exists only in your mind, yet it can control your emotions, decisions, and energy. Negative self-talk trains the mind to expect failure or disappointment. Repeatedly imagining negative outcomes creates a habit of anxiety. Even small, harmless challenges begin to feel threatening. The mind develops a pattern of overestimating risk and underestimating ability. The solution lies in observation and perspective. First, notice when your thoughts are projecting into the future. Ask yourself, is this a real problem I need to act on, or is it a thought playing out possibilities? By differentiating between actual tasks and imagined worries, you reduce unnecessary stress. Stoics practiced a mental exercise called premeditatio, imagining potential difficulties before they occur, but with calm awareness and preparation. The purpose is not to panic, but to prepare the mind rationally. This contrasts sharply with uncontrolled negative self-talk, which creates fear rather than understanding. Replacing judgmental or catastrophic thoughts with rational alternatives calms the mind. Instead of thinking, "I will fail for sure," you can say, "I might face challenges, but I can respond and adjust." This simple shift in dialogue reduces anxiety, restores clarity, and improves decision. Over time, repeated practice rewires the mind to focus on reality, not imagined fears. When negative self-talk is challenged, anxiety loses its hold, and the mind becomes a tool for calm, rational action. One of the most dangerous effects of negative self-talk is that it slowly begins to define who you think you are. When you repeat statements like, "I'm lazy," "I'm weak," or "I'm unlucky," often enough, the mind starts to accept them as truth. What was once just a thought becomes a label, and labels, when internalized, shape your actions. This is how negative self-talk silently influences your life. It doesn't just describe a moment of failure, it becomes a filter through which you see every experience. Once you identify with negative labels, you begin to unconsciously protect them. You stop trying in areas that might challenge the belief, because effort could contradict the identity you've adopted. In other words, negative self-talk can create a self-fulfilling prophecy. Stoic philosophy teaches that we are not the sum of our thoughts. Marcus Aurelius and other Stoics emphasized that judgment and identity should be examined, not assumed. Our thoughts are tools, not rulers. By observing the mind and questioning automatic beliefs, we prevent temporary thoughts from becoming permanent definitions of ourselves. The key is awareness and conscious replacement. Notice when a thought attempts to define you. Ask, "Is this an objective truth, or is it just a mental habit?" Often, the answer is that the negative thought is exaggerated, generalized, or entirely untrue. Replacing identity-based negative self-talk with neutral or growth-focused statements changes behavior. Instead of, "I'm lazy," try, "I didn't act this time, but I can choose to act next time." Instead of, "I always fail," try, "This attempt didn't work, but I can improve." This subtle shift reduces self-imposed limits and opens space for action. You are no longer trapped by labels. You are free to try, to grow, and to respond differently. Remember, your identity should be built on deliberate choices and consistent actions, not the automatic echo of negative thoughts. By preventing negative self-talk from defining who you are, you regain control over your growth, your decisions, and ultimately, your life. Many people believe that the way to handle negative self-talk is to argue with it, fight it, or try to force positivity. While this may work temporarily, it often strengthens the thought by giving it attention. A more effective approach, taught by Stoic philosophers, is observation without reaction. Your mind produces thousands of thoughts every day. Some are helpful, some are neutral, some are negative. Not every thought needs engagement. Negative self-talk often loses power the moment it is observed rather than obeyed. Instead of saying, "I must prove this thought wrong," simply notice, "This is a thought. It is not necessarily true. I am aware of it." Silence does not mean suppression. It means detachment. You are not erasing the thought. You are refusing to give it control. You are becoming the observer of your mind, rather than a slave to it. Epictetus taught that freedom begins in the mind. When you allow negative thoughts to dictate emotions and behavior, you are trapped. When you observe them calmly, you create space to act rationally. This approach reduces stress and prevents impulsive reactions. Instead of responding emotionally, you respond with clarity. Over time, practicing this quiet awareness weakens the habit of negative self-talk. Your inner dialogue shifts from reaction to reflection, from chaos to calm. Practicing silence requires patience. At first, the mind may resist and repeat old patterns, but consistent observation builds mental discipline. You begin to notice patterns, triggers, and automatic judgments before they influence your decisions. Remember, the goal is not to eliminate thoughts, but to change your relationship with them. By treating negative self-talk like passing clouds, you stop it from blocking your view of the present moment. You maintain focus, composure, and the ability to respond wisely. Silence gives you control. It creates mental space for calm decision-making, and it transforms your inner environment into one of clarity, not conflict. One of the biggest mistakes people make when dealing with negative self-talk is trying only to eliminate it. Simply telling yourself, "Don't think that," rarely works. The mind resists emptiness. If you remove a thought without providing an alternative, the same or new negative thoughts often return. Instead, the key is replacement. Replace automatic negative statements with rational, balanced, and constructive ones. This doesn't mean forcing false positivity. It means speaking to yourself with clarity, neutrality, and encouragement for growth. For example, instead of thinking, "I'm terrible at this," say, "I'm learning and improving with each step." Instead of, "I always fail," say, "This attempt didn't work, but I can adjust and try again." This subtle shift has a profound effect. When you speak to yourself with accuracy and calm, your actions naturally align with those thoughts. Negative self-talk is not erased. It is replaced with thoughts that guide behavior rather than limit it. Stoicism teaches that our inner dialogue shapes our character. How you speak to yourself daily becomes the framework for how you act. A repeated negative statement forms a habit of doubt. A repeated neutral or constructive statement builds confidence, focus, and resilience. Replacement also creates a more peaceful mind. Negative self-talk often comes with emotional weight, stress, fear, or shame. Replacing it with rational, solution-focused statements removes unnecessary emotion and restores mental clarity. It is important to start small. Notice the most common negative thought patterns in your mind. Then, consciously formulate neutral, rational alternatives. Repeat this practice consistently, and over time, your inner voice transforms from a critic into a guide. Remember, your thoughts are powerful because they influence your behavior. Do not just fight the negative. Redirect it. Replace it. This allows growth without confrontation and builds a sustainable habit of constructive inner dialogue. By practicing replacement instead of suppression, you regain control, reduce stress, and open the door to consistent progress. Your mind becomes an ally instead of an obstacle. Your mind, like any muscle, requires consistent training. Negative self-talk becomes powerful because it is automatic and unexamined. If you want to change it, you must approach it with deliberate effort and discipline. Stoic philosophers understood this principle well. Marcus Aurelius wrote daily reflections, not to motivate himself temporarily, but to guide his mind consistently. He knew that repeated practice strengthens rational thinking, patience, and inner calm. Similarly, we must train our inner voice, observing it, correcting it, and shaping it deliberately. Start with awareness. Notice when negative thoughts arise. Label them as habitual or automatic rather than truths. This creates space between yourself and the thought, allowing rational assessment. Next, practice correction. Replace negative statements with neutral or constructive alternatives. For example, instead of, "I can't handle this challenge," say, "I may face difficulty, but I can adapt and respond." Instead of, "I always fail," say, "This attempt didn't succeed, but I can try again with insight." Consistency is the key. Just as muscles strengthen with daily exercise, your mental discipline improves with regular practice. The more you notice and correct thoughts, the less power negative self-talk has over time. Discipline also means patience. Your mind may resist. Old thought patterns may return repeatedly. Do not judge yourself for this. Simply observe, correct, and continue. Over time, these small, repeated efforts reshape your inner dialogue and strengthen your resilience. The result is profound. You stop reacting automatically to negative thoughts. You respond with calm, rational focus. Your inner voice becomes a tool for guidance rather than a source of limitation. Remember, you cannot control every external event, but you can control how your mind responds. Treat your inner voice as a skill to be trained, not a burden to be suppressed. With daily discipline, your inner dialogue becomes a foundation for clarity, confidence, and lasting growth. The quality of your life will never rise above the quality of your inner dialogue. Train it well, and it will serve you in every challenge you face. Now that you've learned how negative self-talk shapes your life, it's time to take action. The voice in your head is not your enemy, is a tool. When left unchecked, it can limit your potential, drain your confidence, and keep you trapped in fear or regret. But when observed, disciplined, and guided, it becomes your greatest ally. Remember, awareness is the first step. Notice negative thoughts as they appear. Label them as habitual or automatic. Pause before reacting. This simple observation creates distance, and distance creates freedom. Next, practice correction and replacement. Challenge inaccurate thoughts. Replace harsh statements with rational, constructive alternatives. Do this consistently, and your mind will gradually align with clarity.com and purposeful action. Patience is essential. Old thought patterns may return, and progress may feel slow. Do not judge yourself for this. Growth is built through repetition and consistent practice, not sudden transformation. Every day that you practice observing, correcting, and guiding your inner voice, you strengthen your mental resilience. Stoic philosophy teaches that your mind determines your experience of life more than external events. You may not control circumstances, but you can control how your mind responds. This is where true freedom, focus, and confidence begin. If this video has helped you understand the power of your thoughts, take a moment to subscribe to the channel. Sharing this video with friends or family can also help someone who struggles with negative self-talk. It spreads awareness and helps create a community of people learning to master their minds. Your thoughts are not destiny, they are tools. Train them, observe them, shape them deliberately. The more disciplined your inner voice becomes, the more your life aligns with your values, goals, and potential. Remember, the smallest shift in how you speak to yourself can create the biggest transformation in your life. Start today. Observe, replace, discipline, and watch your confidence, clarity, and calm grow steadily, quietly, and powerfully. Your mind is your foundation. Build it well. The change starts within.